Yes, Stephen, please put your tits away.
All right, they're away.
Perfect.
They're away.
Okay, let me go grab this link and throw it up on Facebook. Oh
Are
my
we in
God.
fact live now?
We are live, yeah. Let me make
Oh, okay.
sure. Looks like we don't have any viewers yet, but it says we should be live.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm sure. I'm sure it'll just start populating like gulags full of libertarians.
Whoa, you just got really loud.
Ooh, I didn't mean to.
Okay. What did I call this? So the title of today's show is Libertarians Will Be Hunted. To be honest, no, not Hunter. That's a different subject. To be honest, they probably deserve it. It's funny. A lot of people, they're going to hear like how often that we shit on libertarians, and they're going to think that we really don't like libertarians. But the thing is,
Well,
we want to like
want more.
libertarians. That's the problem. Yeah, this is tough love.
Yeah, well, I was listening to a phenomenal podcast by Legal Man. Have you heard about the Quash with Legal Man?
I saw you tagged me in a tweet with him, but I don't know who he is.
Oh God, he's great. He's I think he's anonymous, but he's a lawyer. And so his thing is like he just kind of relentlessly trashes constitutional conservatives.
Oh, he's my type
And
of guy.
and his thing is just like it's like you would think that I can't stand them or whatever. He's like, but I just see them as being in the way of
Yeah.
people who could normally be woken up to what's really going on. And of course, he used to be, I guess, a constitutional conservative, but then, just had the curiosity of, and the frustration of like, well, why don't things work the way it seems that they should work? And, had the intellectual curiosity to explore that. Of course, he's a lawyer. And, just kind of came to the conclusion that a lot of people do where, the system is not what you're taught to believe the system is. It works totally differently. And, just got to the conclusion that a lot of people get to.
Is he king pilled or is he just not an idiot?
I think he's just not an idiot. Maybe. Yeah. He just, but he's very frustrated. It's not, if you're looking for a lot of hope, it
Don't
might
go
not
there.
be, not these days. No. Yeah, but I guess really this whole what we're doing right now, we owe people an apology, I think, for something that we said about the election before it happened. We made a video about Trump, and I think basically we've come to the conclusion that people were right. They're both the same. There's no consequence of who gets elected. I know you've been busy with the baby. I've been trying to figure out how to make money and what to do for a living. I haven't looked at the news. Let me just check it out real quick. Oh, yeah, no, actually, screw everyone.
We were right.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think so.
Yep.
The way, if I may, the way that I look at it, right, is, and I think anyone who's going to watch this, they are not in danger of being the kind of people I'm about to describe. But basically, just watching like a news feed of libertarians who seem to be somehow surprised by what's happening, and have like the reaction of, hey, wait a minute. We spent the summer marching with Black Lives Matter. How dare you call us white supremacists or whatever you're calling? It's just almost adorable, But basically, you just have to know. And again, I don't think it's anyone who's watching this, but maybe you have friends. It's like they're gazelles, and they were just kind of running along, being gazelles, and then all of a sudden, there was like a little break off to the left. And these gazelles just kept running around, and we're just like, huh, those people that took that path over there, they're racist terrorists or whatever, but not us. And they didn't realize that they're running towards lions. And so then the lions stood up, and not only did the lions say, roar, they said, roar, we're lions, and all gazelles are racists and terrorists. And these poor libertarians are like,
Domestic
no,
terrorists.
no, we're not. We're super not racist, and we're super. Those people, on the other hand, those people are definitely racist terrorists. And then the lines are like, see, you heard it from them. Libertarians are terror, and it's just they just don't understand like how it works. You know how it's just like you don't control any of the language, and you know like libertarian. The word libertarian overnight for most people went from being associated with a what to I don't know, I guess a domestic terrorist, kind of like a crazy Trump supporter overnight, you know, like that's how powerful language is, and that is how powerful that's a consequence of not being able to control language in any way whatsoever, and not having anyone in there who can control language, right? And that was the utility of having someone in there like Trump. Again, say what you want, but you said it perfectly in the first video. You know, you said, I don't view Trump as my savior, right? But basically, I'm in a horror movie right now, and I'm being chased by, you know, murderous villains or whatever monster. And I can either jam a chair underneath the door, or I can leave the door wide open and like roll out a red carpet. And just Trump is that chair underneath the door. It was never expected that, you know, like Trump is gonna on a second inauguration or whatever they do, gonna get up there and say, look, everyone needs to read Human Action and praxeology. Like we know that's not what's gonna happen, but it's just like there is definitely some impending doom no matter who's president. Like that, I agree with that. But you'll notice like overnight, if you're a libertarian, anyone who cares about liberty or what, we got to come up with a different word. In any way, it's like your life got harder, and it looks like it's going to keep getting harder, in ways that it presumably wouldn't have if Trump was in there. And if you're one of those gazelles, or you have a friend who's one of those gazelles, and they're just like, "What's going on? We're not racist." Just understand, you gotta like either reconcile what kept you from recognizing why those gazelles were going off in that direction and you didn't follow them, or you got to find different gazelles to follow. And by no stretch of the imagination am I saying it should be me or us or whatever, because just because I've personally been right about everything in 2020, I'm sick of it. And I hope I don't continue to be right, because my predictions are usually not that freaking rosy, you know? But just like there's a reason why Matt was just like, I would prefer a Trump presidency. Like, it's bad. I would just prefer Trump's. Like, there was a reason for that.
It's like to use your analogy, to use your gazelles analogy, just to riff on that for a second. Yeah. It's like these gazelles that all the racist bigots and what would be like their lover statists. That's what it'd be. All the other statists took off on this other trail, and they didn't go along, so they're prancing along happily on the trail that they're on. But in addition to that, they're wearing little sweater vests that says "totally not a racist" in big letters on the side of the sweater vest. And so then these people come after him, and they're like, "Oh, you're a bunch of racists," and they're like, "I'm literally wearing a shirt that says I'm not a racist. How can I possibly be a racist?" But
that's what a racist would do.
Is exactly. You don't get to define these terms because you don't control the language. This is like the red pill that Malice talks about, basically. That understanding that there is a network of very wealthy, powerful, corrupt people who want to remain wealthy, powerful, corrupt people. And they've created a media ecosystem that starts with the academy, and that ecosystem defines for people what words are and what to believe. And right now we're in the middle of this process of people checking themselves out of that. And that's it's taking the red pill. Taking the red pill is recognizing that dynamic and saying, all right, I'm going to check out of it, and I'm going to start existing outside that dynamic and look at it from the inside. And there's so many people who recognize that something like the corporate press is corrupt and that the game is rigged. And they recognize all of this stuff, yet somehow they think the solution here is to be better, is to play their role, their prescribed role, but to do it really, really well. You have been assigned a role. If you are a libertarian or a constitutional conservative, you have been assigned a role by your culture. And that role is controlled opposition. That role is you're a foil to the established power that they can point to as, hey, look, there's opposition to us. So we're not a ruling class. There's all these people out here who all oppose us. So we're actually just, there's an even fight here. So you serve that purpose, but you also serve the purpose of being opposition that doesn't pose a threat to their power at all. Because everything that you do is just playing directly back into the very system that you're claiming to try to overthrow. So when I look at these two candidates coming up, it's like people are like, oh, well, the politics isn't the answer. I didn't say it was. I said there's an event that's happening, and that event can end one of two ways, and I would prefer that it end this way. And it just so happens that I have even the tiniest little bit of influence on that outcome. And because I so drastically would prefer that particular outcome, I'll use whatever little bit of influence I have to try to bring out the outcome that I would prefer. So this idea that people are like, well, politics isn't the answer. Well, you believe a whole hell of a lot more in politics than I do, because you're thinking that voting is going to be the answer. I'm saying voting is a specific step that can have some sort of impact on the outcome. So then once the ball was rolling, then I was, oh, actually, there's another analogy I wanted to use. It's kind of like there's an asteroid that's headed toward the planet. And I'm like, I would prefer the circumstance where that asteroid doesn't hit the planet. So what I'm going to do is try to get a bunch of people together to do whatever we need to do to try to make the asteroid go the other direction. And you might say, oh, well, space isn't the answer to everything. You can you can solve problems in your own life. You know, you don't have to, whatever. People come up with every stupid excuse, and they're like, oh, you don't have to, well, why are you doing that? I'm doing that because I don't want the asteroid to hit the planet. So, obviously, the asteroid is much closer than it was before. And people just seem kind of shocked when they suddenly realize it's like people are waking up and realizing they live in a world where asteroids exist. Congratulations, asteroids exist. So I guess that was kind of the victory lap that we wanted to do, was basically saying we were right. So Moldbug Moldbug was wrong about this. Moldbug said that he endorsed Biden. He did it a little ironically, but he seriously endorsed Biden. And he said because the opposition to Trump is so rabid and so insane, but they're just focused on Trump. And if you take Trump out of the way, then they'll lose steam and they won't know what to do with themselves. And I understand that rationale. I understand why he thinks that. And I had to think about it for a little while. Not for very long, but for a little while. And then I realized these people didn't start with Trump. They started before Trump. This has been something that's built up. Trump was a response to this. So if Trump is gone, these people aren't going to be deflated. They're going to be invigorated. They just accomplished something phenomenal. They just accomplished their biggest goal. When people accomplish their biggest goal, their typical response isn't, woo, I'm just going to kick back and relax now. Typically, they're like, hey, let's conquer bigger goals. And what anybody with a brain could have recognized coming into this was that the Biden presidency was, number one, purely a puppet candidacy for the basic, how would you say this? It was a puppet candidacy for the entire institution that people claim to hate and oppose. So if that whole institution has created this puppet candidacy, well then clearly they prefer that puppet candidate win the election than the other guy. So if that's the case, then clearly there's a difference between the two of them. So concluding that there's no difference, first of all, is just kind of goofy. Because the very fact that they've created this puppet candidate is itself evidence that the two aren't the same. But we get... Go ahead.
Do you know who else? You want to know who else that they preferred this candidate to?
Who?
That guy. That guy. So
Mittens.
Mittens. Oh, Mittens. I mean, that just says it, and I get I'm somewhat. I have actual concern because the dude just said libertarian. He mentioned libertarians by name. He didn't. Libertarians are such a small group, and if you talk to them every day, you know, it seems like it's amazing because it seems like you can't freaking get away from them. But like that's not the case at all. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's a very tiny number of people, so they don't even have to say extremist libertarians. They don't cut them up and chop them up. Left libertarian, right libertarian. Just understand right now that you're in the same boat as basically Trump supporters. Doesn't matter what kind of libertarian you are. And as they're dragging you away and putting you on a train, they are not going to be responsive to, well, no, you see, our whole ideology is based on non-aggression. Like, they're not listening to you. You know what I mean? And it's like, I always thought it was dumb to call yourself an anarchist. Maybe not you're taking a word that everyone has an association with, even if you have all the greatest arguments of why that's, you know, a good name for yourself or whatever. Just in terms of winning people over ideologically, you know, calling yourself an anarchist, I don't know if that's great. Wearing anarchist t-shirts, people already have associations with that word. And, you know, this whole summer and everything like that, you start to hear the word anarchist, you know, thrown around.
And it's not just associations, it's very, very negative associations.
Right, yeah.
So it's not like you're starting from a neutral platform. You're starting like deep in the hole.
No, yeah, not at all. And so it's just like you have to just kind of, you have to be smart about it right now. So if you're a libertarian and you think you're capable, and I don't know how bad any of this stuff is going to get necessarily. Like when he said that thing about even libertarians or whatever.
By he, you mean you're talking about, just for people know that might not have heard, it was John Brennan, the former director of the CIA. John Brennan, former director of the CIA, was doing an interview talking about about domestic terrorism and how they need to have a task force and they need to start going after and combating domestic terrorism. It's basically all the same rhetoric that they used about weapons of mass destruction. And he listed off a whole group of people. He said white supremacists and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of it, he said libertarians. So basically, in his mind, as Steven's illustrating here, Andy Craig and Dave Smith are the same person. As much as both of them would like to protest otherwise. But the thing is, Dave Smith, for the areas where I disagree with Dave, one thing he definitely has figured out is that he recognizes the people who want him dead don't see a difference between him and Andy Craig. Andy Craig thinks that he's something different than Dave Smith, and that if he keeps Dave Smith at arm's length and loudly proclaims to everyone that he's not the same as Dave Smith, then when those people come to kill him, then they're not going to kill him. They'll just kill Dave Smith, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm so glad that you weren't one of us, but you weren't racist and a bigot." You know, so I'm very glad that you're here. He'll be like, "Oh, no, it's a theory. This is non-aggression. We have our theory of non-aggression." Yeah. What they hear when you say that is, "I will go down without a fight. I'm a pacifist. I'm not going to do any. Like I will cripple myself. Please hand me the handcuffs. I'll put them on myself. Give me the map. I'll go climb into the boxcar myself." That's what our theory is based on non-aggression. That's what it means to the people who want to see you dead.
He actually retweeted me a couple hours ago.
Dave or Andy?
But Dave.
Ah.
Yeah, but I said I'm really glad these needle blanks are content with being useful idiots for the state by helping push the narrative that libertarians are white supremacists. We'll all be next to each other in the gulags, dum-dum. That was for, yeah.
I like that you censor the blank, but you don't censor the dum-dum. My sensibilities are very offended.
No, I mean, you know, I think that's a good line to have. You can say dum-dum. But yeah, and just so for the triple woke, I just have to get this disclaimer out there if I can, because like I'm sincerely, concerned about some people. But like for the triple woke libertarians who are just like, yeah, Andy Craig's dumb. I'm an OG with this. I'm past all this stuff that you're talking about. I'm all about subverting the government. And
agorism,
you can check out my
agorism, baby.
Yeah. You can check out my How to Subvert the Government podcast. And look, I'd be real wary of like your associations if this stuff is going to get bad. And I don't know how bad it's going to get, maybe it's not going to get that bad, but it could. And I would just be, let's put it this way, I'd be real wary of like, join this Facebook group where we talk about 3D printing guns and how to like, avoid paying taxes. Oh, and if you want plans to print a gun, visit my website. I'm definitely not a Fed trying to make a list of people.gov. You know what I mean? Like, just think a little bit, because stuff might get bad. Maybe it doesn't get bad where to the point where any of this makes a difference. But you have to imagine, because like if I had never been on Facebook, I wouldn't be talking right now. I'm just already screwed. So that's why I'm talking.
Right. I'm too lazy to go back through and delete all of my old posts. So I'm like, I just got to keep leaning into it. It's all in a server farm somewhere anyway.
Yep. Yeah. And so it's just like, for those people, it's just like, you have to imagine that for the former director of the CIA to mention libertarians by name, do you think that 100% of the people that you interact with are not federal agents? Like statistically, is that possible? I mean, you're at a point you have to consider these things.
So that actually is a decent segue into one of the other things I wanted to talk about. So I know that when we talk about how we're going to do a victory lap, there's probably going to be a lot of people that are bent out of shape because they think that we don't deserve to do a victory lap. And so one thing that I wanted to address was this whole 17 thing. Now I've been on Facebook. I basically just stopped posting politically, period, because I want to retain my Facebook account because I want to be able to keep in touch with people and post pictures of my kids. So I'm not talking politics on Facebook anymore. You can get me a little bit on Twitter at RealKingPilled, but I'm coming up with something else. I'm going to do a kind of another thing that's a little more private, and I'm just working out the logistics of it. It's taking a while. It's taking a ridiculous amount of time, but such is life. So, but anyway, so I guess this is all out of order. We didn't really introduce ourselves getting started. We're 22 minutes in, and at this point right now, if you're watching this show, you already know who we are. But so this is a show called King Pilled, and we're going to come up with a really cool little like opener and logo and all that kind of stuff. But we're too lazy, so we're just doing we're doing a live stream to a YouTube channel with no profile picture. That's what we're doing. It's our content that drives the show. You don't need a logo.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, basically Stephen and I are both I might call myself like a recovering libertarian. I made it to libertarian and started kind of thinking about some of these things, and that's so kind of the gist of this show is that we want to talk about politics and philosophy and current events and economics and finance and aliens and whatever else comes to mind. And our guiding principle here is that you need to do the things that work, whether it's in your life or in politics or in whatever you're pursuing. Do the things that work. Live in the real world and do the things that work. Realize that you're not living in a hypothetical reality. You're living in this reality. And the past and the future don't exist. All that exists is the present moment. And you have to do the things that work in the present moment. So a great example of this was this most recent election. People look at it and they say, oh, well, politics isn't the answer, or the two parties are just the same, or there's no difference between the two candidates, or I don't like either of them, or my guy isn't there, whatever. And they say, so therefore I'm not going to participate, which is fine. You're welcome to not participate. I don't participate in curling because it's not something that interests me. If curling was like if the outcome of a curling match had implications about, I don't know, like the future of my son's life, then I might kind of have an opinion about the curling match. But my issue is with the people who not only say that there's no difference and the outcome doesn't matter, but they actively try to prevent other people from participating, or they encourage participation, but they recommend a form of participation that has a very predictable outcome that's guaranteed to never affect the outcome. And this is why I say, do the things that work. So if you're sitting there saying politics isn't the answer, don't get involved in the election, you guys are, you're voting for tyranny if you vote for Trump, whatever. you're an idiot. You're not contributing anything here. You are not only not contributing, you are actively making things worse. And that's part of the type of thing that we want to get into and kind of explain where we're coming from with that in the various shows that we do here, because it's a kind of a very obvious school of thought that we're operating from here. But for whatever reason, it's very difficult for people to attach themselves to, because we have this tendency to believe in magic and to live in hypothetical realities that we construct for ourselves. And this is a libertarian, conservative people they're very prone to doing this thing where they're evaluating a circumstance, particularly with respect to politics, and they will, like, it's almost like they imagine themselves as a character in a movie or something. And they say, if I was scripting this movie, I would say this is how things ideally should work. This is how things ideally should operate. So in an ideal world, Trump and Biden are exactly the same, and there's no outcome, there's no difference here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to abstain from voting, and I'm going to encourage everybody else to abstain from voting. And what's going to happen is that each successive election, people will vote less and less and less, and eventually everybody will just opt out of the system, and they'll say, oh man, the libertarians were right all along. Politics isn't the answer. The government doesn't care about me. Let's have a free market. Let's live in peace and harmony, and let's all get along. Like, when you lay it out like that, it's very obvious that that's not ever going to happen. It's very obvious that this is a fantasy. But somehow, people, when they're making these decisions, and I'm aware of this because I thought like this for a while, you just reason to the point of, well, it would be ideal if everybody didn't participate. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to participate, and I'll hope that everybody else does the same thing. And it's like that meme where it's like, it's like point 1, do this action. Point 2, question mark. Point 3, profit. It's like, what's in that question mark? For you, like libertarians that have this idea that all just opt out of the system, and pretty soon everyone else will as well. What that has happened over the last 300 years makes you think that just opting out is going to affect something or is going to change something? You're operating according to your principles. This is the thing, I've got my principles. It's against my principles to do that. And that's something that I want to get into a little bit later in the show, is talking about principles and basically why principles are bullshit. But first, what I wanted to
go over
address...
what happened the past 3 days.
Yeah. So the first thing that I wanted to say was that I wanted to address the subject of 17. And for those of you who don't know what that is, do the alphabet, go to letter 17, you'll figure it out. Obviously, I'm trying to, at this point now, I'm not only trying to avoid censorship, I'm trying to avoid getting myself put in prison, which clearly is something that was going to happen if Trump was reelected. But yeah, so obviously there's no difference here. But so anyway, so a lot of people I got all of my social media and stuff blew up with people after the 20th, after what happened. Well, it was before then. People were going at me before then, but even after then. And I addressed this on Wealth, Power, and Influence with Jason Stapleton, but I wanted to address it here as well. That if you are coming to me now and you're dunking on me, and you're like, ha, I told you, I'm so much smarter than you, you're so dumb, how could you have thought that? I'm just gonna block you, because, so anybody who's been blocked by me, that's why. Like, I didn't even respond, I just block you. Because you aren't capable of thinking about things on anything more than the absolute surface. And I just don't, I have got enough surface level thinkers in my life, I don't need any more. So I'm just blocking you. But to everyone else who's interested in my opinion and based on what happened, then I want to give that here. So clearly things didn't pan out the way that I was talking about, expecting them to pan out. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. There's 17 people watching right now. Of course there is. See, it's proof. I'm just kidding. So I want to explain my thinking behind where I was coming from with that. Now, obviously, after the first of the year, kind of, when I was saying I'm still 100% confident that Trump is going to be reelected, I think you have to be kind of goofy to think that I actually was 100% confident. At that point, it was a marketing ploy. I was still very confident. I was confident that something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was. But as I outlined in previous shows, I feel very strongly, I feel that there's a lot of evidence, and I kind of arrived at this position on my own before I came up with the 17 thing. There's a lot of evidence that Trump has not been acting alone, that he has powerful, wealthy backing. And I still believe that. I expected a move to be made prior to the 20th, and it didn't happen. And the biggest reason why 16 plus 17 equals 33. Hey, Ken, go look and see how many people I'm following on Twitter. There's a good 2-minute delay, just an FYI. Okay. That's fine. That gives me time to edit it before it gets to people. Where was I here? So I was talking about, building up to the 20th and what happened after that. So by the time the 5th rolled around, I was starting to be a little more, like, I was definitely skeptical. I was like, okay, well, I've had this kind of this theory about what's going on, this theory about the events that's happening. And things aren't going the way that I expected. The biggest reason is because I overestimated the red pilledness of the people around me and Americans at large. And I also underestimated, I wasn't a big enough of a conspiracy theorist, because if you would have asked me, is the, I don't even want to use the term, is the, it's the opposite of it's DS are the abbreviations for it, DS. So it rhymes with Veep slate. So the Veep slate. If someone had said that they were gonna create an Unreal banner and have the whole thing that happened at the building in DC, that I didn't see that coming. I didn't expect them to so blatantly orchestrate an op that they use to. That was loud.
Oh yeah, I live down. It's the worst.
Oh, okay. I didn't expect them to blatantly orchestrate this op where they create this. They completely shift public opinion, and basically at that point, after the 6th, it was pretty clear to me that things probably weren't going to go the way that I had been predicting. But one of the biggest reasons that I'd been sticking with it at that point was part of it was for marketing. If someone comes and they said, "Hey, here's how he can still win," then people are like, "Whatever, shut up, I don't want to hear you." But if you come out and you plant your flag and you say, "I'm 100% confident," people are like, "Okay, well now hold on, that seems unrealistic. What do you have to say?" Because of that, I was able to get people's attention, and that was my goal. But also, a big dynamic here was that it is the element of public consciousness. It doesn't matter what the Veep slate wants to do if they are deep dish pizza plate. There you go. Yeah, deep dish pizza plate. I like that. Deep dish pizza plate. It doesn't matter what the deep dish pizza plate wants to do if all of the public consciousness suddenly, like if you snapped your fingers and the next morning every single person in the country woke up and they recognized the I have to avoid so many words. Something that rhymes with Boater Squad. If they recognized the all of the Boater Squad, then just them being aware of that, just them recognizing that would have completely changed the nature of like public consciousness within the country, and it would have created a massive amount of political pressure that when Congress wound up just kind of ramming the whole thing through, they wouldn't have been able to do that. And that's kind of what I was anticipating. I was anticipating that all of this evidence was going to build up to the point where the whole 17 thing wasn't even really going to come into play. That was just an interesting thing to talk about. What I expected was that public consciousness was going to amp up to the point where people are like, we're like, oh, it's so obvious that the Boater Squad happened, and we just have to proceed to whatever process it took to make it to right the wrong. So what actually ended up happening was like a way bigger conspiracy theory than I ever could have imagined. That they would manage to orchestrate this Unreal banner in such a clean manner, and ooh, little rhyme there, and that they would that they would turn it into basically the new Iraq War narrative, the new Patriot Act narrative. Now, in hindsight, I'm kicking myself because I totally should have expected it. I totally should have seen it coming because this is the exact formula. This is exactly how they do it. The big difference is now, part of it's the nature of the internet and people just being way more aware of everything that's happening within a certain realm all the time. But it's also because they're having to get more and more blatant about all of these ops. And the fact that they're getting more and more blatant, it does two things. Number one, it accelerates the timeline a lot more because they don't have to beat around the bush and hide things as much. They can be a lot more aggressive. So they can shift the Overton window in dramatic ways much more than they used to be able to. You couldn't have done this domestic terrorism pivot as fast as they did. You wouldn't have been able to do that in the past. They pivoted that on a dime. And now they've completely laid the groundwork for this. Now, I kind of had predicted this the day after the election. I posted and said that what they're building up to, what's happening right now, is they're trying to lay the groundwork for criminalizing the act of saying there's voter squad. They're building up to that point. And the media is going to lay this, they're going to completely deny that it happened, and they're going to lay the groundwork for actively criminalizing that. Now, it's getting to the point where so much of political conversation happens only on a few specific mediums. Facebook and Twitter is where the vast overwhelming majority of political conversation in the country happens. And it's been building up to this point, and basically every other conversation has kind of trickled its way back there to where that's where everything is happening. So then when these corporations are able to completely ratchet down the conversation and completely control the narrative on specific issues, they're not just doing it on social media. People are like, oh, social media, who cares? It's just whatever. It's not all of life. But this is where really the modern day public square has become. This is where the vast majority of the conversation's happening. And if the conversation is not happening there, then it doesn't really matter where it's happening. It's not going to have an impact on the outcome. They've ratcheted down the use of social media to completely control the public consciousness and to dictate outcomes. And so anyway, so obviously things didn't pan out the way that I was expecting them to, but in a big way, things are panning out exactly as I expected them to, because leaving aside the Trump thing, this is exactly why I said I wanted to see Trump elected, was because I didn't want to see things go this route. Because with things going this route, a lot of people are going to get hurt. And people who really are innocent, they don't have to get hurt, but they're going to, because they don't have another alternative. There isn't another option out here, because anybody who sees a problem with the system everybody who sees a problem with the system is taking stupid actions. They are not actually taking actions that are going to remedy anything. They're doing very, very stupid things. Now, one thing would be going and attacking the system head on. That's the worst thing that you can do. If you want a tyrannical state, the best way to get it is to attack the state head on. When you attack the state head on, you'll get the worst version of it, guaranteed every time. And this matters both in, like, when you're talking about like a literal physical attack. It also matters in terms of politics, because politics and war are just on a continuum. When we have a vote, what that is that's a battle. That's a battle in a war. But what we do is we just line the two armies up and we say, okay, whichever army is bigger, that one will win. We'll just give the win to them. And now they've kind of gamed a way to get the win, even if the army isn't bigger. But so when you mount a political attack on the system and you say, we're going to undermine the system, we're going to take the system down, which is what you mean when you say we're going to win this election, you are putting yourself square in the crosshairs. You're putting yourself directly under fire. And that's how people are choosing to go about this, because they don't fully appreciate the magnitude of the situation in front of them. They don't appreciate the significance of the moment in time. They're kind of like, oh, it's just, there's elections and they're controversial and whatever. People are always talking about civil war, blah, 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 blah. but we're about as close as we're ever going to get, I think. I'm kind of a natural optimist, so I don't expect things to I don't expect us to get to hot war necessarily. But part of that is me just kind of trying to manifest that. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to I'm not willing to accept an alternative, so I'm just going to try to force that to happen. But anyway, so that's kind of the that was the background I wanted to give on my thinking with the whole 17 thing. That my goal with all of that was ultimately to try to raise people's consciousness, to try to get people to think about this in a more practical, reasonable way. Because this idea that you're somehow gonna overthrow the system by not participating in it, or by checking out, or by just saying, oh, politics isn't everything, that's like you're half right. And sometimes being half right is worse than being 100% wrong. Because the way that this game is going to be won is by people playing the long game. So you have to either be 100% in or 100% out. You can't if you've decided that not only is politics not the answer, but politics does not contain any answers whatsoever, and it's a completely useless tool, and we shouldn't participate in it whatsoever. That's fine. That's an understandable position to have. Then you need to not comment on politics. You need to keep yourself 100% out of it. Leave the politics to the people who are going to get involved. Now, if you're going to get involved, then you need to get involved in a way that doesn't make you an idiot. You need to get involved in a way, think about the actual consequences of your actions. On Friday with Wealth, Power, and Influence, we did a show where we talked about how your intentions don't matter. Libertarians, conservatives are very familiar with this concept because they'll say, oh, well, socialists have great intentions or whatever, but it never works out. And they think that because they're able to win arguments, that means that because they have the truth on their side, because they've seen the world accurately or whatever, that they like to dunk on socialists and progressives and stuff because they're like, they're so stupid. They don't understand that the actual intentions don't matter. It's what the actual outcome of your policies, yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. Those idiot socialists and progressives are winning every single battle because they know that they're in a battle. And libertarians, conservatives, right-wingers, whatever you want to call them, they don't get that they're in a battle, that they're actually, that the rules of war apply to the circumstance here. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not advocating violence. I don't advocate violence at all. I don't advocate doing anything illegal, because if you do anything that's illegal, that makes you a very, very bad person. And nothing about this podcast ever advocates anything illegal. Do only legal things. Did I cover it?
And if it's a joke if it ever happens. This is a disclaimer from here into perpetuity.
Yes. We'll apply this disclaimer on everything. We do not advocate anything illegal.
I think there's one thing to kind of keep, because I know that there's a lot of people who are at the point of, okay, now what? You know what I mean? I think anyone who's watching this, like, we're not talking to people who, like, you know, your neighbor just like, hey, check out these two guys with long hair, you know, and just see if, you know, you're either a registered Democrat or Republican or whatever. They might change the way. I guess not that. It's people who are, you know, I don't want to keep saying red pilled or whatever, but people who kind of like been through the ringer, you know, with this stuff for a while, I would say. And I bet that there's a lot of people who are watching this who feel, okay, now what? You know, and there's really not a lot for those people right now. You know, there's a lot of shows that I think everyone like listens to, and there's a lot of information out there. And I think most of that is for people who are in the process of kind of seeing the way things actually work, maybe, or, you know, kind of just getting woke on the state or whatever it is. Speaking of woke, like, how long has this ideology been like in the works? You know what I mean? It isn't like, yeah, all right, wokeism started in you know 2017, and now it's just completely like there's a way longer groundwork that got laid for it. And if you wanted to, you could probably trace the continuum for centuries, kind of. You know what I mean?
Totally.
If you wanted to, you could certainly take it back to, say, what, the 60s, maybe even the 20s. Depending on
You can draw a
depending on
direct
how.
ideological line from John Brown, the abolitionist terrorist, Civil War times. You can draw a direct ideological line from him to Barack Obama. Moldbug does it on the conversation. His first conversation he had with Thaddeus Russell, he made that connection. He drew a line from
That's right.
John Brown
Yep.
directly through to Obama. So just there,
That's
so that's
right.
that's Civil War to modern times, where there's an ideological thread. But like Stephen said, you can take it back. I mean, there was what's his name, Samuel Johnson, the famous Tory philosopher. He said that Lucifer was the first Whig. And there's this thing called the Whig view of history. We might go into it another. I'll probably do a video about that sometime, like a pre-produced video. The Whig view of history basically is this thing. It's the reason why everything moves left all the way throughout history. Everything's constantly moving left. Like Ben Shapiro now, if you took him back to 1921, then he would be
Communist.
he'd be basically a communist. If you took him back to 1821, he would be a witch. So something's causing everything to really constantly move left. And what is that thing? If you can identify that dynamic, then you can start to predict what's going to happen, and you can understand the nature of the beast. The people who are talking about, both parties are the same and it doesn't matter or whatever, they're like playing in a kiddie pool. They've realized that they're like, it's kind of like they've grasped the very top of a truth, but they don't realize the actual magnitude of the truth that they're holding on to, because the problems are much deeper than both political parties are controlled by people who are driving toward the same general outcome. That's a truth that's so obvious that you shouldn't feel proud of yourself when you encounter it. But somehow people do, which is a testimony to just how completely dumbed down and like weak-brained modern Americans are. But the truth is so much deeper than just both political parties are controlled by wealthy, powerful people who are just trying to consolidate their wealth and power. That's the nature of humanity. The nature of humanity is that every single organization is controlled by a wealthy, powerful person who wants to manipulate things to their own ends. It's so much deeper than that. And so right-wing people, almost as a rule, especially in America, they don't deal with the actual situation that's happening in front of them. They don't have like context for their decisions that they make with regards to politics. They want to take every situation and abstract it out, and then kind of like come up with like, okay, here's how it would work in the ideal world, and we're going to create a system, and then we're going to make a decision, and this decision is just going to have the actual intended consequences that we want, and it's just going to stay that way, and nothing's ever going to change, and we can go back to our lives. But it just so happens that there are radical ideological people who want to see you dead. They hate your guts. They want to see you dead. They'll settle for you just not being around them at all. Mm-hmm. They're perfectly. These people would be perfectly accommodating to genocide if it was presented to them in a pretty bow. So right. they want to see you dead. So you think that you're going to be able to create like this little system, and you're going to like pass a law, and then that's just going to constrain things, and you can go back to your life and let the government run itself. Meanwhile, these people never sleep, trying to think of ways to get one over on you, trying to think of ways to take your laws, turn them back around, and beat the shit out of you with them. And right. That's where I talked about principles. I said principles. I've said that principles are just decorations on the tombstones of dead men. To be a principled person in politics is to be Ned Stark. Ned Stark was principled. That's what being principled gets you. It makes you a martyr. It's having principled positions in politics is effectively indistinguishable from operating directly in participation with the people you're opposing. And
you're in prison.
What's that?
It's like being in prison. So you and me and whoever else, good Christian boys could be in prison, and we could, we could have a small commune on the outside, and we would certainly champion using small money and sound money, and but probably small money also. But sound money and just a mini little Ancapistan with Jesus Christ as the center of our morals and values, right? But that doesn't change the fact that we're actually in prison, and there's a set of rules that exist in prison, and unless you want to just stay there indefinitely, you need to decide if how you're going to take that information of the fact that there are indeed a set of rules that are totally opposite to your own morality. You need to decide what you're going to do with that. With libertarians always talking about time preference in kind of patting themselves on the back of is it high or low? Which one's longer? I always get that backwards. I don't want to say the wrong one.
High time preference means that you want things now.
Okay, right. So low time, right? Okay, so low time preference is you can plan and all that. I think they might be overestimating their own abilities, or maybe underestimating what they're dealing with.
Yes.
Because it's just the people who have the impulse right now. What can we do? It's like, well, right now you can shut up. To start. But it's not something that can be. You're dealing with something with way deeper roots. That's probably maybe how powerful it is, or maybe you're just waking up to it in the past 3 days. But there are people that are born at unfortunate periods of time in history. There are political prisoners. There are people who knew that terrible events were coming and decided to leave. There are people who knew that terrible events were coming and didn't leave, and they suffered the consequence. All this stuff is real, and just because we were born at a period of time in history where it seemed like everything was going to be hunky and dory for the foreseeable future of all our lives, doesn't mean that that's actually true.
Right.
And we don't claim to know how things are going to unfold, but you might be living in a time where you are very much the groundwork of the groundwork of the groundwork of the. It just starts to get going. Like, you might be at the very beginning of what needs to happen. You might not, like, in your lifetime, you might not even begin to see any amount of hope going forward. Now, that's not guaranteed, but it's just, I think people need to at least accept the range of possibilities that are in front of them, and doing things that make sense. I think, getting yourself right spiritually. So not even necessarily religiously, but just spiritually aligned, because really the people who are just waking up to all this, like, yes, we need to have more people that see what's going on. And we talk about manifesting thoughts. Your language does have a certain amount of power. So even when I'm not being doom and gloom right now, and I know a lot of people are feeling doom and gloom, but it's a whole different thing to say everything is screwed, we're all screwed, period, versus everything is screwed unless people wake up, but people are waking up. Yes. Just putting that at the end of it, it might sound, to the people who are listening, maybe not, it does, but there's actual power in those words. It's not just ooga booga. It's there's power in your words, and I think it's important, even if you feel that we are pointed towards a dark direction, that the way that you craft your words and your thoughts it will manifest things if enough people do it.
Human societies are built on complete irrationality. Human society is built entirely on trust, and trust is irrational. Trust is based on belief, and belief is irrational. And yeah, that's a good point here. I forgot to say something about this. Get people liking and sharing this. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel, like and share. I can't see how many likes. Actually, yeah, I can. Okay, so we've got 14 people watching and 5 likes. So there's at least 9 people who need to like and share this video. Try and get us out there. And maybe if you guys like it and share it, then I'll decide to put a profile picture on the YouTube channel. So anyway, so thanks for that, Wyman Taylor Bear. I very appreciate you, Wyman R. Taylor Bear. We've got the greatest audience. So human societies are built on trust, and trust is a product of belief, and belief is irrational. Belief is the act of expecting something even when you don't know it's going to happen. You're believing that it's going to happen. There's belief and there's knowledge. And belief is the gap between what you know and what you don't know. So for that area, if you know something, you don't need to believe it. You know it. So human societies are built on this belief that everyone around you, approximately more or less, wants to get along with you. That you guys want to participate. That you all want to live in a healthy society where everybody gets along and where we're all increasing our prosperity and we're all getting better and better every day. Like there's this kind of belief that that's the case. Because if we didn't believe that was the case, we wouldn't live around people. If you know that somebody around you wants to destroy you, then you're not going to live near them, or you're going to, it's just a fundamental disagreement there. You're like, okay, you got to go or I got to go, because I'm not going to stay around you if you're going to try to destroy me. So people have this, that's what human society is built on. Amy, how do we like it? I don't know. How do you like a YouTube video?
There's a little thumbs up thing.
Yeah. Oh man, she might have clicked the link on Facebook. So you can either like it on Facebook or you can go to the YouTube channel and like the YouTube video. So that's what Stephen is driving at here, is that there's multiple different outcomes that can happen here, and what we're saying is that the worst possible outcome is becoming more and more likely, and if things continue as they are, then we're on a trajectory toward the realization of the worst possible outcome, which is basically ethnic cleansing in the country. That's what there's people who have power and have influence who are working to move the narrative in a specific direction that would be perfectly tolerant of ethnic cleansing for people they disagree with. And you're seeing the groundwork laid for that. They're using all the language of talking about people like, so this CNN lady the other day said that Tucker Carlson's a parasite. That's the type of language that precedes that sort of thing. And there's plenty of examples for that. We don't need to get into that because again, here, neither of us actually believe that that's what's going to happen. But in order to prevent that from happening, we have to get a bunch of people who are aware of the situation that's happening and who have focused their mind on doing whatever is necessary to prevent that from happening. Because if we, again, like if you do the experiment, snap your fingers, everyone tomorrow wakes up and they all fully see the situation clearly and recognize that that's the trajectory, then it wouldn't happen. So this is all a matter of people's attention. If we can get enough people's attention focused on the nature of the situation, then we can all begin working together to create a different possible outcome. So that's our goal here. And ultimately, I'm very optimistic. I'm a big believer in human nature. I'm a big believer in the nature of the human spirit. And I think that actually there's this kind of a duality thing where that the worse things get, the better the worse the situation gets, the better it could possibly get. Like as the situation gets worse and worse, it opens up the opportunity for the situation to get better and better. Because right now, like if you have one person who believes something and then you double that and you have two people that believe the same thing, there's power in that. You'll feel something. If you're trying to explain something to someone and suddenly you see it click and they suddenly see the world the way you do, there's like a moment there, a little moment of euphoria, and it's energizing to you. It actually, on a hormonal level, it's good for you. It makes you healthier. It makes you a stronger, smarter human being when you're able to see something the same way as someone else. Now, if you take 10 people and suddenly you all see the same thing at the same time, you get 100 people, you get 100,000 people. This is why sports is so powerful, because you get a bunch of people that are all in the same room, all focused on the exact same thing, all believing in a specific possible outcome. This is the nature of human belief and consciousness. So our goal here is to try to get enough people to see the world the way that we do. Because if more people see the world the way we do, then we'll be able to actually, it'll increase our ability to affect the outcome and bring about the world that we want. So, another subject I wanted to get in here today was the disappointment that is Justin Amash. I was looking at old Facebook posts of mine, and I posted something. I think it was in like, let's see, it must have been like 2013 or something like that. And I said I couldn't wait for Amash 2016. I loved Justin Amash back then, and ever since then, I think the guy is very well meaning. He just is hopelessly blue pilled, and it's staggering to me that someone could be in the belly of the beast like he is and be as blue pilled as he is. I don't understand how you could see the inner workings of the system and recognize the dynamic, recognize the nature of the system, and still be as like blind to the actual nature of the system as he is. So a great example of this was he was in this Twitter conversation a couple days ago with Justin Amash, or with Dave Smith. It started off when Justin said, "Congratulations to our 46th president of the United States and our 49th vice president of the United States, at Joe Biden and at Kamala Harris." And like as soon as I saw that tweet, I was just like head desk. Like, okay, so clearly this guy is either a double agent, is actively working to undermine his own cause, or he's just really, really dumb. And neither of those is great, but I would rather he be really dumb than him be a double agent. Because
Can
if
I
he's really
ask
dumb,
a
he
devil's
could be
advocate
not.
question?
Go ahead.
All right. So my devil's advocate question for this, and even maybe others that I've had questions about why people aren't more radical. I guess my question is, if you really do think that there's a chance that you could end up in a camp somewhere for thinking the wrong thing, like, do you just straddle a certain line, or do you make certain adjustments to what you do? You know what I mean? Is it possible that some of these people who that I occasionally get frustrated with just have kind of gotten to the point that I got to, and some people got to, where they realize that, oh, this is real. Like, this whole thing where we're dealing with an occupying gang. That's not hyperbole. That's a reality of the situation. I'm gonna rein it in here and here and here, but I'm still gonna say that. Is there anyone who's playing that kind of game? Or if you are a sitting U.S. senator, Massey will sometimes just openly talk a lot of crap, right?
Yep.
But yeah. I was curious if there's any chance that that's what's going on with any of these people. Devil's advocate.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I very much think that I think these people just don't fully appreciate the magnitude of the situation in front of them. I think they just don't. I don't know if it's like a coping mechanism. Like, it would just be so difficult to live in a world where that's the case that they're trying to like protect their own psychology by just refusing to believe that things could possibly be that bad. It could be like a manifestation thing. Like, they're not going to, even though deep down inside they suspect it is, they're not going to like give lip service to that idea because they're like, well, it makes it more likely to happen, which I could understand. I could appreciate that. I don't really think that's the case with most people. I think most people just don't realize the extent to which their worldview has been constructed for them and implanted into them. They like within the realm of the cathedral, like the narrative that if you do like the capital N narrative that the cathedral has put forth, within that narrative, it's the one that says, we live in a constitutional republic. The Constitution was written, and you got two different parties, and the two parties represent the two different views, and they present all the evidence, and voters sit there and they consider it all, and they've learned, they got a great education growing up, coming up through school, and they're able to draw on their great education to look at the two options and come up with which one would be best, and then they go cast their vote, and and there's corruption, and there's people that try to do bad stuff, whatever, but in general, everyone just kind of is well-meaning, is all just trying to do their best, and there's no, like, if you like trace up through the power ranks, like if you go to like a company, and the company has a CEO, and then that CEO is part of some type of like an NGO, and they have like a forum where they all get together, and then all those CEOs that get together, they'll come up with plans, and they'll take those plans and they'll talk to other people that are even more powerful. They don't kind of really think through all that. They kind of like, they stop at the point where they suggest the idea of like a shadowy room with people inside making plans, and they just kind of don't, like, it doesn't, it's like it just doesn't compute beyond that point. And so when they look at this situation, they're just kind of like, oh yeah, things are kind of, there's people who want to do bad stuff, but in general, everyone just kind of wants the same thing. And
so that's how Justin operates.
That's how Justin operates. And this is baffling to me, because he has had a seat at the table, essentially. He's seen behind the curtain. He's looked back there and he's seen the way that all of this works. And yet he still thinks that coming out and talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is because he's trying to expand the debt, or he's, because he isn't Ron Paul on foreign policy, or, whatever thing. He thinks that that's the thing that you need to plant your flag on, because he thinks he actually has a voice. He thinks he actually gets to influence the outcome of the conversation. What he doesn't realize is that there's only two sides of this conversation, and we're not the ones who get to add to the conversation. All we get to do is pick which side we're going to be on. And if you say, well, I'm not going to pick that side or that side, what you're saying is, put me in that camp. Because that camp, the one that these people are assigning themselves to, is the camp of the system. Because the system is everybody who's actively working toward the expansion of the state, plus anybody who's not working against it, against anyone who opposes it. So if you say, I'm not taking a side, they're like, great, thanks, we'll add you to our numbers moving forward. So when Amash comes out and he speaks out against Trump, and he says, oh, Trump's no libertarian, Trump is, he's just as bad as all the other ones. He's removing his voice from the conversation, because these people don't oppose Trump because he's not libertarian enough. These people oppose Trump because he reveals the system for what it is. And the effect of Trump being elected isn't that he's going to pass libertarian policies, because libertarian policies don't matter. Policy doesn't matter. Culture is what matters. The culture and the conversation. And Trump brings stuff into the conversation that changes the game. Because an important part of the game is that there's a curtain, and that people don't see behind that curtain. Trump pulls the curtain back and he shows people that what's behind it. And that's the only win that we need at this point. Right now, all we need is for people to see how the game works. So when Amash comes out and he says, Trump is an evil authoritarian just like all the other ones, what he's doing is he's muddying, he's like pulling the curtain back shut and saying, no, don't look behind it. He's reinforcing the capital N narrative, which is that, Trump is bad and we need to get him out. So there's no like secret large organization of libertarians that are about to come out and rapidly vote en masse and install a minarchist paradise tomorrow. That's not going to happen. That's not on the menu. You don't get to choose that option. The only option you get to choose is advance everything fast or advance everything a little bit less fast. So right now, I think, hey, let's have the less fast option and give us more time to pull our chute, basically. I want to fall toward the ground. I want to hurtle toward the ground at a slightly lower speed, so I have a little bit more time to get a chute pulled. And this is
Justin Amash, the only part in the conversation you have is on the news this. Even libertarian Justin Amash will say blah 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 bad thing about Trump. That's what you get.
Yep.
That's what you get. And that goes for anyone. That goes for any libertarian or any non-preferred group. You know,
Yes,
it's just if whatever you're saying suits their agenda, that's when you get amplified. Which is why I would say if anyone is giving you a platform to say anything, you have to double and triple check. You have to think about it from different angles, whatever you're saying.
yes,
It's probably kind of dumb.
yeah, you're better off not having the platform because your words will have two possible outcomes, neither one of which you control. If your words reinforce their narrative, then you will be added to their role in reinforcing the narrative. If your words don't reinforce the narrative, nobody will hear from you. Or you'll be used as evidence that the narrative is necessary. If you're a libertarian, if you're someone like that, that's what's going to happen. That's what happens with Justin Amash. When he comes out and he says, oh, Trump is bad, then they say, like you said, even libertarian Justin Amash says Trump is bad. And with the implication, therefore, we need Joe Biden. Everything comes back to, in this particular case, everything comes back to we need Joe Biden. So when Amash comes out and he says congratulations to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, he's like, oh, if we're respectful, if we have dignity, if we promote civility, then everything will be better. I struggle to convey just how stupid that is. Like, this is the meme. This is the 1, action, 2, question mark, 3, profit. You don't have anything in the question mark. All you're doing is acting with no consideration for what the effects of it will be. The people who oppose you don't give a shit about civility. They use your civility as a tool against you. You are at war. You're in a ring brawling, and you're acting like if I don't choke the guy tight enough, then maybe he'll let me choke him. It's like this is the nature of politics. Politics is a war. You can't, if you're going to engage in it, you have to realize the actual consequences of your actions. So
that might be one thing that I actually agree with. Like a lot of the current, when the woke crowd will say that words are literal violence, I actually agree with them. Because like you said, politics is on a continuum of war, and so like take it back to prison. What's the difference if you go up to someone and punch them in the mouth, or you go up to someone and call them a bitch? I mean, is there really any difference? The
outcome will be the same.
It's the same. It's the same deal. So yeah, they want civility and decorum when it suits them, right? And if I go too far down this, man, you won't need to worry about a profile picture for this channel. All right, so look, like the left is like they're real good at like politics, in being on the continuum of war, right? So they're very good at this area, and if we agree that it's all violence in a way, it's all war. The left is so good at this one area and like rhetoric and controlling language and anything else that we've ever talked about. And the right's not so good about it because, like we're saying with the time preference, the right sees a problem. It's like, let's solve the problem, not let's gain power and solve the problem. And not what it should be, which is gain power, get more power, and then solve the problem. There's like, how do we solve the problem? The left is so great at the whole part of war that isn't actual violence. The right is kind of good at the other stuff, But it's sort of like, so let's say that if it's mixed martial arts, the right's really good at like stand up, and the left is really good on the ground. We're forced to only play on the ground,
Yeah.
So you have to understand that you're out of your depth. You're good at the other thing, and you're living in a world where it's all this other realm that you're not so great at.
Yes. It's the left is, I like where you're going there, where you said the left is very good at the words part, and the right is very good at the not words part.
The other thing.
But the right gets involved in the not words, or the right gets involved in the words part, and they get their asses kicked. And it pushes us ever closer to the point where people have to get involved in the not words part. And that's the part that we're trying to avoid. Because once we get involved in the not words part, then things get ugly very, very fast. And that's used as pretext for the elimination of words altogether. We'll say that.
Right.
So to Dave's credit, Dave Smith, he quote tweeted Amash's congratulations tweet and said, "Congratulations to the military industrial complex, the police state, and the big banks." Which, bingo, that's exactly what that is in effect what Justin Amash is saying. He's saying, "Hey, good game, guys, you did great." He's effectively endorsing the military industrial complex, the police state, and the big banks. Now he says, "No, I'm not. I'm just trying to promote civility." You don't get to control the way that your words are used. That's what you have to understand. Your intentions don't matter. Your actual impact matters. And your impact is that you are effectively endorsing the people who you claim to oppose. So his response to Dave was, "I think it's appropriate to congratulate every new president and vice president. And your comment could be made about every vice president and president of the last century." Why do you think it's appropriate to congratulate the president and the vice president? What's appropriate about that? Why? Why are you congratulating them? If you oppose them, if you oppose their positions, why are you congratulating them? Why are you civil to them? They are not civil to you. And this isn't a thing where it's, oh, I'm going to be the bigger man. If you're going to be the bigger man, you're going to be dead. That's the ultimate outcome of all of this. You take this to its furthest extent, you're going to bigger man your way right into irrelevance, to have the complete destruction of yourself and all your values and everything you care about. So really, what good are your values? Because in actuality, you don't support or defend them in any way. You allow them to be extinguished. That's the effect of your actions. Continuing, Dave says, "That's the point. I don't congratulate my enemies." Bingo. I did, however, congratulate you for being one of the best congressmen in U.S. history. A lot of good that did. But I ain't congratulating the architect of every evil policy that we both hate for gaining more power. Dave gets it. This is frustrating. Dave gets it more than Amash, quite a bit more than Amash. But that makes it even more frustrating in the areas where Dave doesn't get it. So Justin says, "Thanks, but we're working to persuade people." No, you aren't. You are not persuading anyone. When you congratulate your enemies, you are not persuading anyone. Your intent may be to persuade people, but you're not the one who gets to determine what happens with your words. They will be used regardless of your intent. They'll be used for something else, and that's what happens. This isn't the business of... So his next words, he says, "We don't spread liberty by defeating enemies, but rather by gaining allies." That's exactly where he's wrong. The way you spread liberty is by ensuring that the people who infringe on liberty aren't able to do it. Now, you might have this like hippie, like, oh, we're going to gain allies. We're just going to talk to them and we're going to convince them to see the world our way. I refer back to my statement before where I said people don't oppose libertarianism because they haven't met libertarians. People oppose libertarianism because they have met libertarians, because they know what libertarians believe and they want no part of it. They will gladly destroy you. So you walking up and being like, "Hey, let's be friends," is just, you're just asking them, you're saying, when you destroy me, I'll make it easy for you. It's like, when you come to chop my head off, I'll just bend down and lay my head in front of the chopping block and let you do it. That's the effect of this. He says, "Animosity is good for rallying, but not for growing. I also think it's bad to attribute to malevolence what can be attributed to misguidedness or incompetence." Okay, so the fucking police state is just because of incompetence.
That's
Are
the
you
most blue-pilled
shitting
thing
me?
ever. That's the most blue-pilled take ever. I mean, that's like the John Stossel thing about, everything is so terrible, and it just shows how incompetent these people are. And if that's such a good cover to give them,
right?
I mean, yeah, that's why
they
John
desperately
Stossel,
want you to think that they're incompetent.
that's why John Stossel's a millionaire and not is John Stossel canceled anywhere? I don't think he is, right? I mean, he's still on YouTube. People are fine with that. Like, yeah, like let all the people who, think that everything is so screwed up, put them, towards the guy who and make them feel like they're real, like edgy and outside of the box if they're following the guy who says that it's all incompetence. What a great out to give them.
If there are incompetent people within
Sure.
the government service, there are lots of incompetent people. Many of them are incompetent. If the person's incompetent, they're not the problem. Your problem isn't in dealing with incompetence. You know how you deal with incompetence? You fire people. Do you know how you fire people? You get power. If you don't have power, you can't fire people. So then the question is, how do you get power? And if you're Justin Amash, you're sure as hell not going to get any power by congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on winning the election. You're not going to. So you're not going to be firing anyone.
Get a cabinet position?
Right. Oh yeah. So he's gonna infiltrate him. He's gonna get secretary of the toilet. That's exactly where he's gonna wind up. So
yeah, go ahead.
So if the people who are the incompetent ones, those aren't the source of the problem. Those people are just in the way. You don't need, if you're focusing on them, you're an idiot. Because you don't need to focus on them. Those are the people who are just incompetent. They can be managed and they can be dealt with no problem once you have the power to do something about it. But if you're looking at the people who are incompetent, you're not looking at the problem. The problem is the people who are using the people who are incompetent. This is where the war is. The war is in the people who have the power. And the people who have the power, by definition, are not incompetent. Your problem is not misguidedness or incompetence. That's a problem. But if you're focused on that, then you're not focused on solving the problem, because you don't solve incompetence or misguidedness. You're like, that's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. This whole sequence with Amash just absolutely chapped my ass, because the guy is in a position where he could accomplish something. He could promote something. He could improve the circumstances in some way. But not only is he not contributing positively towards some sort of a beneficial outcome, he's actively working against it. And this is just emblematic of libertarians in general. Malice quote tweeted that. He said, "This is such a perfect encapsulation of the blue-pilled worldview that it should be called the blue capsule," which is exactly true. But the guy that there's a guy, you guys, if you're on Twitter, you need to go follow this guy named Aaron McIntyre. He's a great guy. He's got a YouTube channel as well where he does some really good videos. He talks about Moldbug and other stuff like that. He's from a neo-reactionary perspective. His name is spelled Auron. McIntyre, the Scottish way, Macintyre. So Aaron McIntyre. Go follow him on Twitter. He's a great guy. He's got really, really good takes. But he quote tweeted that Justin Amash tweet. And he said, "Libertarians were engineered in a lab to lose every single time." What is the exact opposite of a winning strategy on every conceivable front? We will gather them together and call them libertarianism. This is my issue with libertarians. You guys, the fact that you've figured out how to engineer a hypothetical world doesn't do anything for you. It's not transferring to the real world. You ultimately, at some point, you have to interact with the world that is, and not the world that could be. If you want to interact in the world that could be, you have to do the work of creating it. And if you're going to do the work of creating it, you have to do what artisans do. When artisans create something, what they do is they take a couple of steps and then they look at what happened. So maybe you're like carving some wood. So you'll carve, and then you look at what you're creating and you're like, oh, that didn't do what I wanted it to. I'm going to carve in a different way. But libertarianism is like people carving an imaginary wood figurine and like never going back over their work or something. Like it's a tortured analogy here, but it just, libertarianism is the end. That's the end goal. But you're not going to get there by acting like a libertarian. In fact, acting like a libertarian takes you in the opposite direction away from your goal. Because again, ultimately, this is all about power. It's all power games. If you want to be able to influence the outcome, you have to have power. Power is zero sum. If someone else has it, you don't. There is no way of getting more power without someone else getting less. So if you want to play this game where you're trying to like play by the rules and be friendly and whatever else, you're not serious. You're not actually focused on trying to solve these problems. Ultimately, the way these problems are going to be solved is by people playing the long game. The commies have been playing the long game. The existing, this whole great reset thing that's coming, this is the realization of Trotsky's vision, in essence. Trotsky was the man of where he said that to be successful, communism has to be global. There has to be perpetual revolution all over the world, because he recognized properly that if you restrict it to a single country, it'll destroy itself. He's like, you have to get the entire world. You have to get the entire globe on board. And that's where the neocons came from. The neocons realized that, and they started playing the long game. They laid the groundwork for what's being realized today. They appeal to people with power. If you want to bring about a world where there's liberty, where there's more liberty, where there's prosperity, you need to have a worldview. You need to have a strategy that appeals to people who have wealth and power. And libertarianism, limited government, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't appeal to people who have wealth and power. Ultimately, they're pulled away in other directions, and they're the ones who dictate the direction of society. This is the circulation of the elites, the iron law of oligarchy. Ultimately, society is always going to be driven by the people who have wealth, power, and influence. This other podcast that I'm on, those are the people who run the world. So if you want to run the world in a different direction than you currently are, it starts with the attainment of power. And the biggest way that you can get that is through wealth. But really then, to play the long game, you need to outlast these people. You need to outnumber them, ultimately. And you do that by making babies. So
you're taking it right on.
So
go
the
ahead.
game here is not go on Twitter and congratulate the Chinese puppet of the central bankers. That doesn't promote liberty. You promote liberty by increasing your own wealth, power, and influence, and by controlling your own income and controlling your community, by creating a network of people who can work like humans. Humans are people. Libertarians go, oh, individualism and collectivism, whatever. Humans are collectivist. Fact, scientific fact. I don't care about your arguments for individualism. The necessity for respecting individual rights is not the same thing as humans are individualist. You will never survive as an individual. You can't. You don't even exist as an individual. Your brain is populated by the society that you live in. All of your ideas are virtually, with few exceptions, virtually all of your ideas are seeded into you by your population that's around you. Humans exist completely as a comprehensive collective network. So you need to have a network of people who believe like you do and who are all working on a strategy that will actually have the impact that you want to have. Cause and effect. So
that's the that's one of the things, because I know that there's a lot of people who are feeling down. I just saw someone walking by the street. Sorry. There's a lot of people who are like really like down, don't know what to do. There's a lot that they feel is out of their hands, and that's very true. But a lot of people feel like that, so you're not alone specifically. A lot of people are in that boat, and you're also sort of you're ahead of the game probably. There's a lot of people who are waking up. A lot of this stuff is on full display. So just because you have a head start of kind of being like woke on, power and the state and these corporations and everything that's going on, there are going to be people who are catching up to you. and like, people like Dave and people like Malice, and Tom Woods and all those people. Those people are great for taking open-minded people capable of thinking and kind of bringing them into this world and increasing the numbers. And that's like a very important space for them to hold. And I think they do a great job with that. Every time that someone listens to Dave talk, once he gets an opportunity to be on something like Tim Pool or Rogan or whatever, there's more people that are joining. So there's a lot of effort right now. This is my inspirational portion, by the way. There's a lot of people who I think there's a hopeless, helpless feeling, but there's more people coming to the party, the small P party, to the cookout. There's more people coming to the cookout, and maybe also the party. I don't know.
Shout out Hotep Jesus.
Yeah. But oh God, let's not even get into that. Have you seen that one on Twitter today about black outreach?
Oh no, I haven't. I haven't really been on Twitter today.
Oh, don't even bother. But anyway, there's more people coming, but you have a head start. So as opposed to feel bad for yourself, like give yourself these 2 weeks to feel bad about yourself or however long you've been feeling bad. And then once you move past that, realize that you need to become the fucking Chad version of whoever you are. You have to be, if you're Spencer, you have to become Chad Spencer. Like it's the only way. You have to align yourself spiritually. You have to you figure out how to take care of yourself. You have to become the healthiest you've ever been. You have to become the most mentally strong and resilient that you could be. So it's not, that might mean turning your attention away from, if you're frustrated on listening to people talking and saying how messed up everything is, but and you're just like, well, yeah, what do we do? What do we do? There's nothing we can do. All right, then you might need to just dial back where you put your attention and focus it on improving yourself. Like you said, making babies, like not just like, oh, I'm gonna, because there's so many people right now who just have kids and just throw them into this indoctrination camp, and then like, what do you think is gonna like come out of there? I mean, we're seeing it, like right now, what the results are of that. So it's like you need to figure out, like, do you know how to hunt? Figure out how to hunt. Do you know how to grow food? Figure out how to do that. Start a network of people. It's like, if you're already like awake for all this stuff and you're out there and you're like, well, we can't do anything. It's like, no, you have to put all that effort into you and connecting with people who are like you in order to have something ready for the people who are waking up to all this.
Absolutely. And I'm frustrated going forward with a little bit. My mind isn't completely made up with this whole move now where what's his name? Maj and Dave are going to take over the LP, and it just, Ken says the gateways are necessary, especially whenever there's an ongoing attempt to dumb down society. You can't go to zero to David Icke overnight. Yeah, and that's true. That's fair. You can't, like Malice says, he says you've got to take the red pill, but you don't want to take the whole bottle. Mm-hmm. And I would say there's no problem with taking the whole bottle. You just need to, work your way up. You can't take them all at one time. That's where people's brains break. But ultimately, what I'm concerned about is people thinking that this is a political problem, that this is a problem that's going to be solved politically, and it's not. If you so what I would say to people who are probably going to want to try to get involved, and they'll get all this fervor built up around the LP with these guys who are going to try to take over with the LPMC and everything, like, have measured expectations. Like, recognize what you're doing. You're not going to change the world with that. It's just going to be a tool toward that end if you use it right. Politics typically isn't a platform for evangelism. Like, that's not the nature of it. By the time you're involved in politics, the evangelism has to be finished. You don't, to use the war analogy, you're not out in the middle of the battle trying to persuade people to come fight with you. If you're out fighting, then the persuasion part is over. So there's circumstances where you can kind of use it as a platform for getting your name out or whatever, and raising your profile. And I recognize that. You just have to realize that's what you're doing. So don't think that all these guys are growing in popularity and they're going to take over the LP and then that's what's going to solve the problem here, or oh well, Trump is going to create the Patriot Party and then that's what's going to fix it all. There's lots of good reasons to participate in something like that. There's lots of good reasons not to. But if you understand what you're doing, there's lots of good reasons to participate in those types of political movements. But realize that those aren't the solution. Those are just those are a tool in the arsenal. Ultimately, the solution is with you. The solution is with, like Steven said, becoming the best version of yourself. Because if you get yourself physically and spiritually aligned, then it doesn't matter what the circumstances are around you. It doesn't matter how so there's this Planet Lockdown thing with Stevens Bay, Catherine Austin Fitz.
Hell yeah!
If you guys haven't seen that video, go watch it. I highly recommend it. The takeaway from it for a lot of people that I've seen is they've gotten pretty doom-pilled about it. They've gotten very much like, oh, we're screwed. There's no, it's this. These people are the plan is far too. It's way too far along toward being realized that there's nothing we can do about it now, and it's just we gotta hunker down and try to survive. And I don't think that's the case. I think there's lots of time for many different things to happen. But I think it takes belief. It takes people believing in there being an alternative and people believing in the fundamental goodness that is within humanity. That goodness doesn't always get realized, but it's there. And the way that you draw it out is by believing in it and investing in it. So if you can draw out the most goodness from your own self through getting yourself physically and spiritually locked in and tapped into the source, whatever you want to call that source, whether you want to call it God or the universe or whatever, if you get yourself locked in and tapped into that source, then it will inform your actions. You'll know what to do. You'll know how to act in each given situation. But this is going to be a process that's going to take a lot of really outside the box thinking, and people have to break out of these old models of thinking about the world in broken ways. Our opposition is not honorable. They're not deserving of respect and consideration, but they're also not deserving. You can't underestimate them. They're out for blood, and they're ready to take over. And we'll talk in future conversations about the exact nature of them and everything, because there's lots of people. The vast majority of these people are useful idiots. They're just they're basically being mind controlled. They're being operated like someone's got a joystick and is operating and directing all their actions. So really it's the people behind the scenes who are doing that. Those are the real true enemies. But you're not going to be able to take them on until you are the best version of yourself. And once you become the best version of yourself, then number one, you develop the capacity to actually be able to engage in these sorts of conflicts, ideological. So I'll make it very clear. I'm talking ideological conflicts. You're able to be the most persuasive. You're able to accumulate the most power to yourself, because ultimately that's what this is going to be. This is going to be have to be a game where people who are, what do you call them? Friends of liberty, libertarians, conservatives, these types of people. Ultimately, we're going to have to be in the game of accumulating power. But before you can start accumulating power, you have to deserve it. You have to be worthy of it. And to be worthy of it, you have to be the best version of yourself. So that's where the game needs to be right now. That's where the focus needs to be, is on protecting yourself and protecting your family, making the most of yourself, and accumulating as much power and influence to yourself as you can. And a lot of that is then, again, back to the podcast, a lot of that is a product of wealth. But to the Planet Lockdown thing, so she talks about how there's this currency war right now where we're in this transition where the central bankers are basically trying to drag out the old currency system, the US dollar. They're trying to string it out long enough to give them time to bring in the new system. And the new system is not a currency. It's an entirely new means of transaction. And it's connected to words that I'm not going to say on here. I don't even know how to create code for them. But it's connected to the infection that's going around, the very common Unreal Banner infection that has plagued us for the last year. There's connections to that, and people, you guys know what I'm saying. But what it comes down to ultimately is that you need to be able to survive, and not just survive but thrive, no matter what the transaction system is. So you need to stop thinking in terms of currencies or means of exchange. Bitcoin isn't going to save you. Gold isn't going to save you. Predicting the next central bank currency isn't going to save you. That's not where your security will be. Your security will be in ensuring that you can survive and thrive no matter what the currency is, no matter what the means of exchange is. And that's going to depend upon your own skill set and your brain, your ability to navigate each situation that you come into, and then ultimately your network, the people who you're networked with, the people who you're connected to. Again, strength in numbers. You need to have a large social circle, not necessarily of people that are friends necessarily, but you need to have a lot of credibility with people around you, and you need to offer something of value to them that makes them need you. Because humans are selfish, simple beings. Ultimately, we want to be around people who give us stuff that we need, that offer us something that we need. So if you can offer something to people that they need, then you're going to have security no matter what the financial system, no matter what the outcome. I can't remember if I had anything else I wanted to talk about today. Do you have anything else?
Well, it was such an inspirational point that you just made. Into that, I hope everyone goes and subscribes to Messina Dance Company on YouTube, so that I may further my influence. Certainly not wealth, but my influence.
The wealth will come.
Yes, but I wonder if anyone, because like I say, I do think it's important to manifest the right things and speak the right words, but also recognize how real all of this is. And I wonder if anyone listening, when people say, "Oh, they want you dead," when you hear those words, I wonder if people think it's like hyperbolic. But if you just kind of think it through, it might not be in the way that you think necessarily, just like, oh, people are just hunting you down. It's not really like that, especially to start. But if you think of just sort of the life trajectory of most of the people that that would have a problem with a lot of what, say, we're saying, or a lot of libertarians say, or whatever, you kind of understand that for them, you're not going to get from them, you're not going to get a lot of sympathy in terms of like the censorship stuff. For like, you being kicked off of Facebook or whatever you want to call, this kind of like new world, like that's not really the new world for them. That represents a return to their normal, like
yes.
When you call it like a new normal of, this stuff with the censorship and being exiled to alt tech and all that stuff. This has been what most of their life was. If they grew up, they were born, they went to government schools for, K through 12, right? And there they got educated by, the people who went through this same system that I am currently outlining just a generation before. And like referring back, this all has been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries, right? So that's how it progresses, to use the word, right? But okay, so they go K through 12. They get what they get at government schools. They go off to college, and they just get all that on steroids now, in college. And there's all these reinforcement mechanisms there, that even if they weren't like card carrying communists by the time when they graduate high school, it's just like they're being educated by them in college, and they've got all the incentives in the world to move further in that direction, right? And so now, if you look at in the past, couple decades, you've got people who are staying in college for just eternity. I mean, they're just doing graduate work and PhDs, and they're staying there until they're freaking 40 years old. They don't have any real interaction with the real world, the private sector, in a lot of ways, and all the, listening to NPR, and they let the cadence of who's speaking to them, read the CIA report every morning, thinking that it's the most, the most it's news for intelligent people, not news for people who, have an allowable conversation of like, this. But they didn't have to hear anything that disagreed with them or challenged their views. They didn't have any exposure to that their whole life. They have to listen to you talking about all this crazy shit.
As far as they were concerned, you didn't exist.
You never existed to begin with. And the only reason, and because really, a lot of times, if you had thoughts that were counter to that, it's within a lot of the personalities of people. Believe it or not, I used to really keep to myself with all this stuff. I know I'm streaming on the internet right now, but it's been a long time. But I mean, look, I grew up in Massachusetts. I mean, I had a crash course in just listening, even as a kid, just listening to people openly slam whoever the Republicans were, and you just kept it moving. You just kept it moving because most people want to go along to get along, even if they know better, right? Which also is kind of a hopeful thing with these masses. Just you wonder how many people just deep down just need a little bit of a push to ask the question, but ultimately they just don't want to be bothered, and they need to pick up milk and bring it home to their wife before she yells at them, whatever. But like you're saying, you didn't exist. And people were conditioned to just sort of not really challenge it unless they reach some kind of like breaking point. But when Trump came along, he didn't create that ideology. He did embolden people to speak up a little bit, right? But like you said, they never knew that you had these thoughts to begin with because you were just quiet. Everyone's just quiet before. So yeah, Trump brought this to the surface, and all of a sudden people are disagreeing with them, and people are, coming up with different opinions that challenge their way of thinking, and they might not have anything to come back with because they've never had to have any kind of debate that is grounded anywhere in any kind of logic or reason, right? Which is very convenient that the philosophy that they've been working off of has zero commitment to that to begin with. But just understand that, like, after this hellish 4 or 5 years of hearing people think differently than them, whatever the means is of you shutting the fuck up and going away, that is what most of their life has been. And that for them is normal. So if you are expecting them to advocate for you, it's going to be a minority amount of people who do that. So you going away, or you going to jail, or you going to like, they think that what you think is literal violence anyway. And way before the former director of the CIA talked about libertarians being terrorists, I saw when the lockdown protests were happening, flags of white supremacy, and it was the Confederate flag, and it was the Betsy Ross flag, and it was the Nazi flag, and it was the Gadsden flag. It's all in the same freaking bucket with them. It's all, you were all, to these people, you that flag that you love, no step snake, that already meant Klan member to a lot of people. So it just it's not as far-fetched as it may seem, but there is something that can be done with it about it.
Right. And what is that? What can be done?
Oh, I don't know. I was hoping that you would say something. All that stuff you just said.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know you brought up the flags, and it reminded me of the lockdown protests that happened in, was it Michigan, where they like stormed the Capitol in Michigan, and you remember how that was framed? That was framed as these people like want to kill people, and they're white supremacists, and they're an acute danger to society. And this is in the middle of all of the or the riots, for lack of a better word, all the riots rampaging through the city, and a blind eye was completely turned to those. And then with the Kavanaugh thing, you had the Capitol was stormed and occupied. I mean, stormed, occupied. It was effectively the same thing that happened on January 6th. And these two things were treated just completely differently. And I know that this is preaching to the choir. A lot of these people this has been a pretty big red pill for a lot of people to see that happen. But what you've got to realize is that the game isn't fair. The game is not meant to be fair. The rules are explicitly built against you. The rules are explicitly designed to ensure your failure and to ensure that you are silent and out of their hair and away from them. That's how the game is. This is not hypocrisy on their part. This is hierarchy. These people occupy a higher level of hierarchy in the current society than you. They have more status than you do. And all of your protests otherwise do nothing but reinforce that fact. So if you want to have a higher status, if you want to, as Stephen said, if you want to turn this tide, if you want to promote liberty or increase prosperity or promote peace or whatever, you have to fully appreciate the nature of the circumstance in front of you and realize that this isn't a fair fight. It's not meant to be. So don't expect one. Don't expect a fair fight. Assume that everything is built against you. Assume that the infrastructure exists to guarantee your failure and your destruction. If you start from that premise, then it's only up from there. And then I mean, if you've built yourself to succeed in a system that's explicitly designed to prevent you from succeeding, then what's going to happen when eventually a system comes around that isn't built against you? You're going to be unstoppable. So plan for the worst case scenario, but then build yourself up to the point where you can succeed no matter what, and you'll be able to create your own best case scenario. So, but it's not going to happen through the LP. I can tell you that. And it's not going to happen through the GOP, and it's not going to happen through the Patriot Party. Those could be tools, but ultimately it's going to depend on you. It's going to depend on you making yourself someone who's worthy of the power that you want to have to be able to influence the outcome and to influence the world around you. So that's going to be our goal with this podcast, is to first of all, to for anybody who doesn't see it, to help them see it, and likely preaching to the choir a lot. We'll probably be venting, and a lot of people who are as frustrated as we are will come to hear us vent. And then we just want to explore lots of different things related to this. There's so many different avenues that are of interest to me that I don't really see an outlet for them anywhere else. There's a lot of subjects that I want to discuss that I just don't see a lot of other people discussing. And part of realizing the nature of the situation here is recognizing that the information that you've been exposed to has been wildly constricted and narrowed down. And just a few select things that you're allowed to believe have been permitted to filter into your world. But there's a great big world out there, and there's a lot of things that are happening, and a lot of people with ideas and stuff that they're discovering and discussing and stuff that there isn't really an outlet for them. You don't see it through the corporate press. You don't see it through Hollywood. You don't see it through your university degree or whatever else. The places where most people go to get their information isn't going to tell you the more than just a fraction of what's going on in the world around you. So I've kind of discovered, I've stumbled my way into a world where, I don't know, I guess I am connected to a larger sphere of information than a lot of people around me, and I get exposed to a lot more than most people that I see. So I want to be able to use this as an opportunity to share with people the stuff that I'm hearing and seeing and thinking about that they might be interested in, and that I don't see other people talking about. So that's what this podcast is going to be about. And I just cannot get over the fact that you look so much like Hagrid from Harry Potter. This whole time I've been sitting here feeling like I'm having a conversation with Hagrid.
I don't know what that is. Yeah, and I would say this everything he said about the I don't know. Like what the podcast is going to be. I would like to also add it is the perfect Christmas present. If you know any blue-pilled libertarians with a kind of a masochistic streak, this would be great for them.
Yeah. Go share this with Andy Craig. One other thing I wanted to point out here was that I got about an hour and 45 minutes into the show before I realized that I was using the wrong microphone. So go team. It was great. Anyways, so hopefully my audio wasn't too trash, but this has been fun. Jason wasn't able to make it in here with us this time. He's taking a big social media break right now, but we should have him on again in future, in future conversations here, because I know everybody wants to look at him. So this has been fun. Steven, I'd enjoyed this. Let's do this again sometime.
All right, man.
Peace.